Have you heard of the Battle of Waterloo? And by the Battle of Waterloo, I'm not talking about the Napoleon fight. I'm talking about people trying to get those Odyssey tickets for the BFI IMAX. And yeah, good luck with that. I'm sure that is coming up soon. So, but also, full disclosure, they will be showing it for months. If you do not manage to see it in the first week or so, just be patient. Why do I talk about Waterloo? First of all, we have here Waterloo, Monday, 19th of January. Funny thing, this was a Christmas gift, and it was really a gift. The synopsis, first of all. So it depicts the events that led to the Battle of Waterloo and the battle itself, as the Duke of Wellington and Napoleon fight a battle of historic proportions. Epically historic proportions. And yeah, what makes this so special is that this is directed by Soviet director Sergei Bondarchuk, who did a 7-hour film called War and Peace, of course adapting Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, which is why that film is 7 hours long. Technically it's split into 4 different films. There is a Criterion release of it, although I think it's only in America, so yeah, but it is a great film. You can find it on YouTube because Mosfilm released that, as a matter of fact. And yeah, this story behind this film I think is a little bit interesting, to where I will go a little bit into the details of it, because that is what makes it part of what makes it so special. So in a surprising turn of events, this is actually a co-production between Italy and the Soviet Union. And yeah, Dino De Laurentiis was the producer on this, and the Soviet army was actually very necessary for this, because they were, for the scale of the army, because all of them were essentially drafted as extras. And look, the magnificent impact of it is on display. I think Sergei Bondarchuk is very great at directing such huge scale battles. I don't think anybody has really done it to his level. Potentially Nolan could do it, I think, but that the amount of money that would cost today is even outside of Nolan's scope, I think, in terms of budgets. I think he would much rather use his budget more wisely. But the actual impact of it is on display there. And some dismiss this, I think, as being some flashy theatrics and almost as a marketing bullet point. But I think for me, that really worked, because I think it highlights the individual insignificance of all the soldiers on the battlefield that are being marionetted by the 2 generals on the opposing sides. And you get that scale because they're able to get sweeping shots of the battlefield. There are some helicopter shots there as well. And well, I think what makes Bondarchuk's direction so strong is that he's also able to provide some moments of individual tragedy there, and drama and beauty too, so it doesn't feel like it's just this film that wants to make an epic fight and have that be the main draw. There is drama involved there is a beauty involved there. He is more than just a big scale budget guide. Like, for example, this is something that I would argue that even Nolan doesn't do too well. His films feel oddly cold despite some of the themes they explore. For example, particularly Interstellar, I would say, honestly. Although my favorite Nolan film is actually Tenet. Next up, Tuesday the 20th of January, we've got Fata Morgana. I do not know what that actually means, but it's a film by Werner Herzog. So those who know. So the synopsis, very the word synopsis is very loose. I don't know, maybe just idea. So here it's Werner Herzog's meta-documentary of people living under extreme conditions of the Sahara Desert. And this is anchored through text being recited there. I think it's about some Mayan mythology about the creation of the world or something like that. The specifics elude me, but it's very much outside of my scope of knowledge. So this was also my first encounter with a headstock picture, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I think there is little for me to describe, as much of it is very contemplative. So if you choose to surrender yourself to the work and want to actually consider what it's trying to say, and look, sometimes just like Tenet, don't try to understand it, just try to feel it. And look, I wasn't exactly ready for this kind of film when I was watching it, but it was still captivating all the same. I think the main reason I chose it is because I wanted to watch something that was around like 40-50 minutes long. I'll be honest, if once we go through like the weeks, you'll notice that essentially if it's a short film or a long film depends on how many hours I have left in the day. So that's why some weeks are really good and some weeks not so good. But this week was actually pretty good, because on Wednesday we got Rashomon. You know, that's the Akira Kurosawa classic, and of course the infamous, or just famous, Simpson joke. And in terms of the synopsis, and I will be a little bit more vague than maybe some other people would. So here we have a bandit who encounters a traveling husband and a wife. So there is a crime involved there, and the bandit gets caught. This then leads to several involved individuals recounting the story from different perspectives. This is about as descriptive I can be without giving away too much. But I think what's really fascinating is how effortlessly the film pulls off multiple perspectives and using the cinematic language to get that across. But what's so annoying is that the sheer mastery of it is so hard to appreciate on the first watch. Also reading subtitles, because, you know, you're reading with like subtitles and there's some like minor visual flourishes that once you know to look for them, you can like really pick them out and be like, oh, that's very interesting. And then you see what Akira Kurosawa is really trying to do, and that's where you really get the beauty of it. It is interesting enough that the premise explores the biases of perspectives, but the way the cinematic language reinforces that is the beauty of the film. I think Rashomon is a bit annoying of a film because of how simple it seems, but how much you can really get out of it, which is why it is so highly regarded, and for all the right reasons. And for me, my big takeaway is, ever since watching the film, and if I'm talking to someone about something and I disagree with them, I just say it's a Rashomon type situation. And those who I've annoyed some people with this because I would force that it's a Rashomon type situation. Look, if you don't agree with that, it's just a Rashomon type situation. What can I say? Then next up, January 22nd, a Thursday. Hamnet, more like Borenet. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to do that one. And so yeah, synopsis. Inspired by true events, this explores the love and tragedy of William Shakespeare's life and how the loss of his son, Hamnet, potentially inspired Hamlet, the famous play. And here I say potentially inspired Hamlet, as I think this is something of a point of contention there, because based on some of the research I've done, this is something that did happen in real life, in terms of William Shakespeare had a son by name Hamnet and ended up passing away, and that's what the film explores and interjects some scenes of how potentially certain parts of Hamlet were essentially William Shakespeare's way of dealing with the grief, and explores beautifully the way art and stories can help people process grief, with some great scenes there, specifically including Jessie Buckley, who is magnificent in this film. But for me, it doesn't work entirely, and I unfortunately have to chalk it up to Chloe Zhao's direction here, because she creates a detached perspective that made it hard for me to connect with the work. Some could argue it's the omnipresence of death that looms over the characters, but it didn't work for me. There are some scenes there where the camera's position is like out here, like it's like this, it's like out there is in the corner of the room, or just like overhanging the room, and it's like some Resident Evil fixed camera angle type situation. And this is something that feels more documentary, and that is something where I'm a fan of Chloe Zhao's Nomadland, for example. I think that works really well, and that style works so well for that type of story. But here, I don't think it does. And another point for me is digital cinematography here looked far too cold, far too perfect. It is very grounded and using natural lighting as well that misses any sort of drama, in my opinion. There is, for example, somewhat spoilers, I suppose. There is a scene where William Shakespeare, played by Paul Mescal, standing on a pier, and it's middle of the night, and that's where he allegedly comes up with it to be or not to be speech, and you cannot see anything because it's completely dark. Look, I get it, it's the middle of the night. Technically, there wouldn't be any light, but it's a movie. You can have motivated lighting. You can have the moonlight. Yeah, it's not technically realistic, but that's not what movies are about. That is not what movies are about. It's just, and I was watching this also in the Dolby Cinema, so it's not like the projection room was messed up and I couldn't see anything because of that. I was watching it at home. No, I was watching it in one of the best cinemas. So even if I had that complaint in a Dolby Cinema, then they really did mess something up. And then here we have for Friday, the 23rd of January, Amelie. And this one, I have an interesting story with this because I really hated it on my first watch. I called this French Chunkin Express. I must have had a very bad day that day. And by the way, I meant French Chunkin Express as a criticism because, as in, it's not original enough. And yeah, normally I'd say like Chunkin Express is one of my favorite films of all time. I'd say that's a very great compliment, but in this case I didn't mean it as such. In terms of the synopsis, this is also somewhat something of a cult classic. It's in Letterboxd top 250, I believe. So yeah, the synopsis: Amelie is a lonely soul who discovers a drive to help others in her small social circle while avoiding her own happiness. A chance encounter with a stranger compels the shy Amelie to change her ways. So yeah, this time I really enjoyed it, and there's a kindness and warmth to it that the story and the colors just exude out of every just frame there. It's such a colorful film in terms of the use of the reds, and it balances out with some blues and greens. It's a very colorful picture. I do wish we'd get a more beautiful 4K release at some point, but yeah, it's a very sweet and amusing film at times. I don't have like too much there to say, but yeah, it's just a good old watch. It's pleasant. Not everything needs to be Borenet. And then Sunday, that was a good day. The 25th of January, I watched No Other Choice at the BFI IMAX, and this was my second time watching this because I was actually at the London Film Festival premiere for No Other Choice. I sat 3 rows away from Park Chan-wook. It is my favorite film of 2025, and there is no contest there. The fact that it did not get nominated for anything in terms of the Academy Awards is why I think they are irrelevant. So the synopsis: a man is axed after a company he works for is acquired by an American company, so he looks for a new job and decides to eliminate other potential candidates for the position. The unemployment and financial hardships test his marriage. That is the most elaborate way to sum up the full film because I think it's so thematically dense. And there is a lot you can really read into there. I think Park Chan-wook has been proven himself as one of the best for the longest time. For me, he is my favorite director of all time. And what can I say? I think his ability to bend cinematic language to his own will, and ability to write a story which tonally is so playful that makes balancing it so difficult on paper, but somehow Park Chan-wook is able to weave all of this together so effortlessly, so beautifully, and as I said, using cinematic language to just bending to his will. Some of the transitions here, I just this is the type of work I think that is best to have its own dedicated review. This is just meant to highlight what I enjoyed about any particular film and give a recommendation, a little bit of guidance, and that's about what I would like sum up here, because I think if I start saying more, I will go on a very long tangent essentially, and yeah, this is something that would probably benefit from its own dedicated review. So yeah, it's been a pretty interesting week all around for this one, and that's pretty much rounding out January. But you know, in the next week we also have some interesting ones, so you know, see you around.